Good morning, friends. Today we are going to read a story about a very special dog. And so we have my dog who is joining us for our story. This is Nutmeg. Hi, Nut. And I never had a pet growing up, but pretty much as soon as I graduated, I got a dog. And that was Nutmeg. She's trying to eat a feather out of the pillow. Don't eat the feather, Nutmeg. I have her sitting on top of a couple pillows on a chair so you can see her. So she's up high enough that you can see her little self. She's a Maltipoo Maltese miniature poodle mix. And she's my little buddy. So today's story is called Tig's Tale. And it is one of our flip books. There's 2 stories and the stories are about the life of Ellen White. So we read Where's Moo Cow a few weeks ago, and we're going to flip the book over and read Tig's Tale today. All right. You ready, Nutmeg? Okay. Tiglath-Pileser was a king who lived a long time ago. Tiglath-Pileser was also the name of Ellen White's dog. It all happened in Australia at Sunnyside. Sunnyside was the name of Mrs. White's home. It was Tig's home, too. Late one dark night, shadows moved near the house. People were sneaking around out there, strange people. Then they left. The next day, one of Mrs. White's workers ran up the steps into the house, shouting, "The washing is gone! The clothesline is empty! They did it again! Oh no, Nutmeg, they did it again!" Everyone in the house was upset. Someone was stealing their clothes right off the clothesline. Other things had gone missing too. It wasn't safe to leave anything outside. Even the garden tools were gone. Secretaries, houseworkers, even the gardener gathered around Sarah, who was one of Mrs. White's closest friends and a nurse, and they complained to her about all the stolen things. Everyone was talking at the same time. Their voices grew louder and louder, and each one wanted to be heard. "We know who did it," called one. "We sure do," said another. "Let's go get our things back," someone shouted. They all agreed. And Sarah could do nothing to stop them. Just then, as they reached the front door, they heard a voice from upstairs. "Sarah," it said, "what is the trouble?" "It's Mrs. White," someone whispered. "Wait here," Sarah told them. "Don't do anything until I get back." And up the stairs she went. Everyone waited for a long time. Finally, Sarah came back down the stairs, and she was smiling. "We are going to get a watchdog," she announced, "and that will take care of everything from now on." Do you have a watchdog? My little dog is not much of a watcher unless you're a squirrel or someone on the bike going past our window. Then there's a lot of noise. That is how Tig came to live at Sunnyside. Some grumbled about their lost things, but with Tig around, well, maybe, they thought. Just maybe things will be better. At least they hoped so. Tig, short for Tiglath-Pileser, of course, was a happy dog. He had his own little house and a long chain that tied him to a stump. But at times it rained so hard that his house got flooded. And that wasn't good. So someone had the bright idea of tilting Tig's house on an angle. That way the water would not be so deep when it came in. Anyway, he was happy with everyone and everything that happened to him, even a tilted house and a wet floor. But those strange shadows around the house still sneaked in at night, and things kept disappearing. And what was Tig doing about it? There's the shadows sneaking around the house. There's Tig. What was Tig doing about it? Well, he wagged his tail. And once in a while he would give a little bark, but not a very loud bark. That was all he did. "It doesn't work," someone mumbled as she glanced at Tig. "That dog, he doesn't watch anything." "Oh, yes, he does," came an answer. "He watches the thieves." Then things really got bad. The Sabbath dinner disappeared. That was just too much. On Friday night, the cook had placed it outside on a covered porch, ready for Sabbath. Now it, too, was gone. Everyone knew who was doing the stealing. The sheriff had come out from town to tell Ellen White about a group of people living on the other side of the hill behind Sunnyside. "They are bad," he said, "and they will give you lots of trouble." "We will take care of it," Mrs. White replied. "The Lord picked out this place for us, and we will stay. He will take care of us." The sheriff just shook his head and walked away. "I don't believe this," he mumbled. "There will be trouble. I know it." To stop her secretary's workers and everyone else at Sunnyside from getting into trouble with the neighbors, Mrs. White took over. She decided to go talk with them herself. So she and Sarah traveled up and over the hill behind the house. They went with a little horse and a buggy. Tig and everyone else watched them leave. But when they got to the other side, the people living there slammed their doors shut. They wouldn't talk with Mrs. White. So it was back up over the hill to Sunnyside. Things kept disappearing, and Tig just kept right on wagging his tail. Every day Mrs. White went to speak with the people on the other side of the hill, but they would not talk to her. Then one day, as Sarah and Mrs. White came down the hill, they found a door to one of the houses open. Mrs. White knocked. "Go away," came the answer. "Someone is sick in here." "But I'm your neighbor," Mrs. White assured them, "and I have a nurse with me." The door opened wide. A voice said, "Come in." Sure enough, someone was really sick in the house. So Sarah went to work, and that person got better. Sarah was a hero. The news spread fast, and those people thought Sarah could heal anything. Aren't nurses amazing? I'm so glad we have some good nurses in our hospitals taking care of us right now. So the next time the little buggy appeared at the top of the hill, all the doors were open. It seemed like every house had someone sick inside. Sarah worked on them as hard as she could, but in time, the people didn't wait for the buggy to come to their side of the hill. They started bringing sick people over the hill to Sunnyside. Now Mrs. White and her family had a whole new set of problems, but old Tig just kept on wagging his tail through it all. He liked everything that went on, and he even got a few pats once in a while. Some of the sick were so bad off that Sarah had to put them in bed right away. She did what she could. Then finally, with a deep sigh, she said, "We need a doctor around here." Still more and more sick came. That meant bad news for the secretaries and house staff. They had to give up their rooms to make places for the sick. And they pulled their desks and typewriters out into the halls, and they weren't too happy. When the halls started to fill up with hospital beds, everyone was ready to quit work and leave Sunnyside. They had had enough. Not one of them was happy, except for Tig. He just kept right on wagging his tail. "We need a hospital with doctors," Sarah announced. "We can't go on like this." What was Mrs. White going to do now? Things at Sunnyside were falling apart. Her workers were ready to leave. Sarah was overworked, and there was no end of sick people coming for help. She prayed and then walked back and forth in her room. As she did, she thought about all kinds of things, but she could think of no solution to the problem. Once, as she saw Tig through her window, she noticed how happy he was, and she smiled as she saw his tail wag. That made her feel better, and she began to relax. Then she had an idea. She went to her desk and began to write. arrived. Several hours later, she had a large pile of letters to mail all over the world. In them, Mrs. White asked for money to build a hospital. Something new and strange now began to happen at Sunnyside. The house was still full of sick people. The secretaries were busy working in their corners, but smiles began to appear on everyone's face. All seemed happy. And people reported that the stolen things were now coming back. What had happened? The answer was simple. Ellen White's helpers were Christians. To her delight, she found that they were studying their Bibles with the sick people. And in time, many of the people from the other side of the hill became church members. Their lives changed as they came to know Jesus. Next came letters with money. Lots of money from all over the world, enough to build a hospital. What about Tig? Well, he went right on wagging his tail. He was a very happy dog. Oh, Mrs. White sighed, now we have a new problem. There is enough money to build the hospital, but we need someone to build it. Sarah smiled. That's no problem, she said. What do you mean by that? Asked Mrs. White. Our new church members from the other side of the hill, she replied. Many of them are carpenters, bricklayers, cement mixers, and craftsmen. They will build our hospital for us. Just you wait and see. Sarah was right. And that is the story of how the first Seventh-day Adventist hospital was built in the beautiful land called Australia. It is also the story of Tig, the happy little dog in the tilted house who loved to wag his tail, even at thieves. The end. I'm so glad that you joined me today for our story about Ellen White's dog, Tiglath-Pileser, or Tig for short. And I am glad that I got to share my little dog with you. We've been going for some walks outside, and she's been sitting on my lap as I've been working some of these days. And once in a while, she gets frustrated that my laptop is where she wants to be, and she tries to nose it out of the way. I wonder if any of you have pets who you're spending time with in the midst of all of this. And I would love to see pictures. So you can pop a picture of your pet in the comment. Tell me their name. Tell me something you love to do with them. That would be so fun for me to get a window into your lives as you have a window into my life a couple times a week. So thank you for joining me, and happy Friday. I'll see you again soon.